what if our story is not the first? What if, long before humans built cities, launched rockets, or dreamed of the stars, another civilization rose, flourished, and vanished, leaving almost nothing behind? The rocks beneath our feet recycle themselves. The oceans erase. Time swallows everything. But could there still be whispers, scars, fingerprints of a forgotten age? Welcome to the Science Pulse, where we journey beyond the edge of certainty into mysteries that challenge how we see the universe and ourselves. For centuries, humanity has believed itself unique, the pinnacle of Earth's evolutionary journey. From stone tools to satellites, from cave fires to artificial intelligence, we see ourselves as the opening act of civilization. But what if we are only the latest chapter in a book whose earlier pages have been erased? The Earth is old, staggeringly old. 4.5 billion years of oceans rising and falling, mountains building and crumbling, continents drifting like rafts on molten seas. In this vast expanse of time, whole worlds have come and gone. Species flourished, dominated and perished, leaving only faint imprints in stone. But here is the haunting question. In that abyss of deep time, could another intelligence have risen long before us? Could there have been a civilization, advanced, inventive, maybe even global, that thrived, fell, and vanished millions of years before humans ever walked upright? In 2018, two NASA scientists proposed what they called the Silurian Hypothesis. Their thought experiment was simple, yet staggering. If an industrial civilization had existed millions of years ago, would we even know it today? Their answer, unsettlingly, was maybe not. The rocks beneath our feet recycle themselves. The oceans erase. Forests reclaim. In just tens of thousands of years, steel crumbles to dust, glass shatters to sand, and concrete dissolves back into the earth. What then, after tens of millions? What evidence could survive long enough for us to find? Tonight, we follow this mystery into the deep past. We will explore lost worlds, hidden fingerprints in the fossil record, and the possibility that we are not the first to dream, to build, and to fall. This is not just a question of science. It is a question of identity, destiny, and time itself. The Earth does not remember in the way we hope it will. Its memory is not like ours. Fragile, yes, but also merciless. If we vanish tonight, the silence of our absence would be filled quickly. The wind would peal at rooftops. The rain would seep into concrete. Roots would break apart foundations. In a century, glass towers would be reduced to skeletons. In 1,000 years, forests would grow where cities once pulsed with light. In 10,000 years, the face of the earth would look almost untouched. The ruins of humanity would be scattered scraps, indistinguishable from the stones of the hills. But time does not stop there. The clock of the earth does not tick in centuries. It turns in millions of years. Over such spans, even the greatest monuments crumble into dust, and the dust itself is buried, pressed, and remade. Skyscrapers dissolve into sediments. Bridges collapse into rivers. Satellites fall and vanish into the ocean. The oceans themselves rise and retreat. Mountains rise and erode. Continents drift across the globe like wandering ghosts. This is the cruel truth. The Earth is not a museum. It does not preserve our works like artifacts in a glass case. It is a restless planet, forever renewing itself, consuming its own history in the slow churn of tectonic plates. The seafloor today, wide and deep, will be dragged beneath the continents and melted into the mantle within a few 100 million years. Whatever lies upon it, our cables, our submarines, our wrecks, our cities drowned by rising seas, will not be buried treasures. They will be erased. Even life itself, the very bones and shells of creatures, rarely survives this process. For every fossil we have discovered, millions of lives have vanished without a trace. Fossilization is rare, requiring a perfect collision of chance, rapid burial, mineralization, and protection from decay. Most creatures, even mighty dinosaurs, disappeared without leaving so much as a tooth. If life itself is so easily forgotten, what hope do human structures have against the vast patience of geology? Think of our oldest human monuments. The pyramids of Giza rise proud from the desert, built of stone designed to last. And yet, they are only 5,000 years old, a heartbeat in geologic time. Already, their surfaces have worn, their edges softened by sand and wind. Now imagine extending that age, not by thousands, but by millions of years. The pyramids would not stand. Their stones would crack, tumble, grind down into grains. The desert would claim them, and the shifting crust of the earth would one day pull them beneath new mountains or seas. Our modern cities would fare even worse. Steel rusts, concrete fractures, glass shatters and returns to sand. Plastics, for all their seeming permanence, will eventually fragment, buried into layers of future rock. What will remain is not architecture, but chemistry. Faint signatures in the soil, strange isotopes, unfamiliar compounds. 1,000,000 years from now, New York or Beijing would not be visible as ruins. They would be whispers, detectable only to a geologist with sensitive instruments, tracing anomalies in stone. And so we ask, if humanity is so vulnerable to the erosion of time, how could we ever hope to recognize another civilization, one that may have risen long before us? The oceans complicate this even further. They cover most of Earth's surface, and they are both creators and destroyers of memory. Sunken cities like Atlantis belong to myth, but the reality is stranger. The ocean floor is young in geologic terms, rarely older than 200 million years. Sediments build, but eventually the floor is dragged beneath the continents and melted away. If an ancient civilization once lived along coasts, now swallowed by the sea, its traces may already be gone, locked forever in the planet's hidden furnace. Even on land, erosion is relentless. Rain carves valleys, wind smooths stone, rivers shift their courses and swallow towns whole. Forests grow, die, and grow again, erasing all that lay beneath. Volcanoes bury landscapes, glaciers grind them flat. The earth does not protect the past, it consumes it. This is why the fossil record feels like a diary written in torn pages. The story we reconstruct of life on this planet is not complete, but fractured, missing more than it reveals. Whole species may have lived and died without leaving even a trace. Entire ecosystems could be absent, their remains scattered beyond recognition. If nature can so easily erase its own children, what chance would an artificial civilization have? It is easy to think our presence is indelible, that concrete and steel, satellites and highways will endure forever. But this is arrogance. In truth, we are temporary. The earth is not shaped for memory, it is shaped for renewal. If another civilization had existed millions of years ago, the odds are that their cities too are gone. Their monuments have turned to dust. Their history has been melted into the mantle, erased from sight, reduced to a handful of chemical scars deep within stone. And so, the question lingers. If they came before us, would we even know? In 2018, two scientists, Gavin Schmidt of NASA's Goddard Institute and Adam Frank, an astrophysicist at the University of Rochester, asked a question that unsettled even themselves. They called it the Silurian Hypothesis. It was not meant to prove that ancient civilizations existed. It was a thought experiment, a mirror held up to our assumptions. The question was simple, almost childlike in its phrasing. If an industrial civilization had arisen on Earth millions of years ago, would we even know? The name they chose was playful, almost mischievous, a nod to a species of intelligent reptiles in an old British science fiction show, Doctor Who, called the Silurians. But beneath the humor was a razor-sharp seriousness. Their reasoning was rooted not in fantasy, but in the cold mechanics of geology and chemistry. The Earth, they argued, is not a reliable archivist. The fossil record, as vast as it feels, is a tiny sampling of deep time. Even with all our modern effort, we have uncovered only fragments of past worlds. Bones, shells, impressions in stone. And when it comes to human civilization, our works are younger still. Our oldest cities are barely 10,000 years old. Our industrial age has spanned only 3 centuries. In the immensity of geologic history, our age is not even a breath. So if another civilization, industrial, technological, even global, had arisen millions of years ago, its ruins might already be gone. But not all traces vanish. The Earth forgets, but it also leaves scars. Schmidt and Frank asked, what scars would we leave, and what scars might reveal that someone else had come before us? They began with the obvious, our materials. Plastics, strange polymers, would fragment, but their chemical fingerprints could be preserved in sediments. Radioactive isotopes from nuclear power, war, or medical use could linger for millions of years, embedded in rock. Even fertilizers, spread across continents, could leave behind unusual spikes of nitrogen in the soil. Future geologists might never find our cities, but they would find our chemistry. The pair called this the geological fingerprint of civilization. A subtle layer in stone, distinct from anything natural, a boundary that says, here, something unusual happened. Here, a species changed the very chemistry of the planet. When they examined Earth's past, they found something intriguing. Several times in deep history, the planet had undergone sudden, dramatic changes. Carbon dioxide levels spiked. Oxygen levels fluctuated wildly. Temperatures rose in violent pulses. Oceans acidified. These events left their own fingerprints in the rock. Some were caused by volcanic outbursts, others by asteroid impacts. But Schmidt and Frank asked, could any of these changes have been the echoes of civilizations now long gone? The thought is intoxicating. What if a spike in carbon 55 million years ago, during the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, was not only volcanic? What if it was, in some part, industrial? What if there was a species, thriving and inventive, who burned fuels, reshaped landscapes, altered climate, and then perished, leaving only a chemical scar? Most scientists argue this is unlikely. Natural processes can account for these events, and extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But the Silurian hypothesis is not about proof. It is about humility. It reminds us that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Our planet is not timeless stone. It is a recycler. It grinds, buries, melts, and remakes. The deeper we look, the more we realize that silence in the fossil record may not mean emptiness. It may simply mean forgetting. Think of what we ourselves are doing. In just 3 centuries of industry, we have altered the chemistry of the atmosphere, the oceans, the soils. We have laid down layers of plastics, aluminum, synthetic fertilizers, nuclear byproducts. If our species vanished tomorrow, in millions of years, these would remain as anomalies, strange, unnatural markers, subtle but unmistakable to a careful eye. If another species were to rise after us, they might never know who we were, what language we spoke, what dreams we dreamed, but they would know we existed, not from our monuments, but from the scars we left in stone. This is the unsettling power of the Silurian Hypothesis. It does not say there was a civilization before us. It says, if there was, we might never know, except through the faintest fingerprints in the rock record. And in that possibility lies both wonder and dread. For if we are not the first, then we are not as unique as we imagine. Civilization may not be a one-time miracle, but a recurring pattern, a flame that lights and extinguishes again and again across the span of ages. And if others came before us, then perhaps our fate too is to vanish, leaving only scars for someone else to puzzle over in the far future. There are moments when the earth seems to offer hints, strange clues, fragments that do not quite fit the puzzle of history as we know it. Most of them dissolve beneath the weight of science, explained away as natural oddities or mistakes of context. Yet a few linger, curiosities that fuel the imagination, like shadows on the wall of a cave. They invite us to ask, are these simply quirks of nature or echoes of something forgotten? Archaeology and geology have long been haunted by these whispers, often called out-of-place artifacts. A hammer encased in stone, tiny metallic spheres found deep in mines, maps that seem to show coastlines long before they were supposedly charted. Each one sparks headlines, speculation, even conspiracy. But beneath the noise lies a quieter, more important truth. Our picture of the past is always incomplete, always vulnerable to surprise. Take the Klerksdorp spheres of South Africa. Discovered in ancient pyrophyllite deposits, some of these small metallic-looking objects seem unnervingly regular, with grooves running around their centers. To some, they look like manufactured relics, the precision of their shapes suggesting design. Geologists argue they are natural concretions, formed by mineral processes deep underground. Yet their symmetry continues to inspire speculation. Could they be artifacts of something long before us? Or are we simply seeing patterns where none exist? There is also the tale of the so-called London hammer, a corroded tool discovered in Texas, seemingly encased in rock thought to be hundreds of millions of years old. Most scientists dismiss it as a modern hammer that became embedded in concretion, a trick of chemistry and time. But still, it lingers in popular imagination, a symbol of possibility, or of how easily we can be deceived by stone. And then there are the maps. The Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral, seems to show parts of South America with uncanny accuracy. Some claim it even depicts the coastline of Antarctica, free of ice, long before modern surveys. Historians explain it as a compilation of earlier maps, a patchwork of knowledge passed from hand to hand. Yet the mystery remains. How much was known, and how much forgotten in the depths of our own human story? Each of these examples has explanations that tether them back to the ground of reason. Natural formation, misinterpretation, chance. And yet, together, they remind us how fragile our certainty really is. If such small mysteries can survive into the present, how many greater truths might have been buried entirely? The Earth, after all, is not just a destroyer of memory. It is also a trickster. It hides and reveals, offering glimpses that can be misread or misunderstood. A line in rock might be the mark of ancient industry, or merely the path of water across stone. A spike of carbon might be the signature of machines, or of volcanoes erupting with violent force. This ambiguity is not failure. It is the nature of deep time itself. When we look back millions of years, we are not peering through a clear window. We are squinting at a shattered glass, trying to reconstruct a vast and complex story from the shards that remain. And so, we are left with questions. Not certainty, but possibility. Could there have been civilizations before us, hidden beneath these puzzles? Civilizations whose ruins are now sand, whose monuments are now dust, whose memory lingers only as anomalies in the rocks we hold in our hands. Perhaps the most sobering thought is this: even if there were, we may never know. For in the deep silence of geologic time, almost everything is eventually erased. The mysteries we encounter, the spheres, the hammers, the maps, may not be evidence of forgotten civilizations, but they remind us of how little we truly see. In that darkness, imagination fills the void. We tell stories of Atlantis, of Lemuria, of vanished continents and drowned empires. Myths are not proof, but they are memory of another kind. Echoes of human longing, the need to explain the gaps in our knowledge with tales of what might have been. And perhaps that is the greatest mystery of all. Not whether civilizations came before us, but why we so deeply feel that they might have. It is as if the earth itself whispers to us, "You are not the first, and you will not be the last." If there was once another civilization on Earth, what would remain of it today? It is tempting to imagine ruins like our own, half-buried pyramids, shattered towers, colossal statues, or the skeletal remains of machines waiting to be uncovered. But time is not so kind. The ruins we know from our own past, Rome, Angkor, Machu Picchu, are measured in centuries or millennia. Even at these scales, they are fragile. Rain washes away mortar, roots pry apart stones, earthquakes topple temples. Entire cities have vanished beneath jungle and desert in a handful of centuries. Archaeologists rediscover them not as intact places, but as broken whispers. Now extend that process into tens of thousands of years. Extend it into millions. Imagine New York City abandoned. Within decades, vines would twist through concrete, glass would fall from towers, animals would return to the avenues. Within centuries, the tallest skyscrapers would collapse. Bridges would rust and tumble. Subways would flood, sinkholes opening where once trains roared. Within 10,000 years, the last walls would have fallen. The last steel beams turned to reddish powder. The whole city buried beneath new layers of soil. 1,000,000 years later, what would remain? Perhaps a faint concentration of materials, an unusual seam of metals, fragments of glass melted into stone, plastics compressed into thin chemical layers. To a geologist, it might look less like a city and more like a strange, colorful stripe running through the Earth's crust. Not ruins, but chemistry. Our monuments would not survive much better. Even the pyramids, built to endure eternity, would weather down under relentless winds and shifting sands. The greatest dams would break, their walls dissolving into gravel. Even nuclear power plants, fortresses of reinforced concrete would erode. What might last are the isotopes themselves, their radioactive fingerprints lingering in the soil, an invisible reminder that something powerful once burned here. What about the sea? The ocean floor swallows ships quickly. Metal hulls collapse under pressure, corrode, and vanish into sediments. Entire fleets could be erased in a few thousand years. Cities along coasts, drowned by rising seas, would be buried beneath silt and sand. But even those will not last forever. The ocean crust is young, constantly recycled into the mantle. In 200 million years, much of today's seafloor will no longer exist at all. The fossilization of industry, then, is not the preservation of monuments. It is the reduction of technology into anomalies. Layers of plastics, seams of synthetic alloys, spikes of carbon, isotopes in stone. If someone came after us, they would not uncover intact machines. They would not walk through the bones of our skyscrapers. They would read our existence in chemical signatures, like faint scars on a canvas, marks that say, "Here, something unusual once lived." And perhaps that is exactly how we might detect others who came before us. Not by finding their ruins, but by studying the deep language of rock and soil. If a species had built an industry, burned fuels, spread metals, created artificial compounds, their memory would remain not as cities, but as chemistry, subtle, elusive, but unmistakably artificial. It is a humbling thought. We build monuments to last, believing they will stand forever. Yet forever is a word that geology does not recognize. The Earth's patience is infinite. Mountains crumble, oceans rise, continents drift. In time, all becomes stone, and even stone becomes fire. If there was another civilization before us, its cities, its machines, its monuments, all have already been returned to the planet. What lingers is not their glory, but their fingerprint, waiting in silence for someone curious enough to notice. The story of life on Earth is not a straight line. It is a rhythm of rise and collapse, of dominance and disappearance. More than 99% of all species that have ever lived are gone. Extinction is not the exception, it is the rule. When we think of the great rulers of the past, none loom larger than the dinosaurs. For over 160 million years, they walked the earth, evolving into forms vast and terrible, small and swift, ruling skies, seas, and land. To them, their dominion must have seemed eternal. Yet in a single cataclysm, it ended. A rock from the heavens, 6 miles wide, struck what is now Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. In moments, forests burned, oceans boiled, skies darkened. Within decades, the dinosaurs, those giants who had endured longer than our species has even existed, were gone. What survived was not the mighty, but the small. Mammals, once insignificant creatures scurrying in the shadows, began their slow ascent, and in time, from their lineage, came us. If such rulers could be erased so suddenly, what of civilizations? If another intelligence had risen in ages past, their fate might have been the same: a meteor impact, a volcanic outburst, a runaway climate. In the face of catastrophe, no amount of power, no technology, no empire can endure forever. Even in human history, we have tasted this fragility. The Mayans built great cities in the jungles of Central America, yet drought and collapse left their stone temples swallowed by vines. The Roman Empire spanned continents, building aqueducts, arenas, and roads that seemed unbreakable, yet within centuries, it fractured, its monuments left to crumble. These collapses are measured in centuries, brief compared to the vast aeons of Earth. But they remind us how fragile the idea of permanence truly is. Extinction does not always come from the heavens. Sometimes it is born from within. Species overconsume, exhaust their environments, and fade. Civilizations, too, can collapse under the weight of their own success. Soil stripped of fertility, forests cut beyond recovery, water poisoned, air choked with smoke. These are wounds that topple empires just as surely as fire from the sky. If there was another civilization before us, perhaps this was their fate. Not sudden apocalypse, but slow undoing. Perhaps they thrived, expanded, transformed their world, until their own ambition unmade them. Perhaps their collapse was so complete that even memory of them was erased, their works ground to dust, their story lost in the silence of time. The lesson is stark. We often imagine our civilization as unshakable, as the culmination of history. But the Earth does not favor permanence. It favors change. It rewards resilience, adaptation, humility. The dinosaurs thought themselves eternal, though they could not think as we do. Ancient empires believed they would last forever, though their voices are now only echoes. If we, with all our machines, our satellites, our networks, were to fall, would we be remembered differently? Or would we, too, vanish into stone and silence, leaving only the faintest scars for someone else, someday, to wonder over? Extinction is not just a biological event. It is a reminder, carved deep into the record of Earth, that dominance is always temporary. And if civilizations before us have fallen, then our survival may not depend on our brilliance, but on our humility, our ability to learn that we are part of the rhythm of rise and fall, not immune to it. For most of Earth's history, the oceans have been the cradle of life. Long before forests grew on land, long before wings first cut the sky, the seas were already full of creatures, strange and spectacular. The first cells drifted here. The first animals swam here. Even today, the majority of our planet's living biomass still lies beneath these shifting waves. If we wonder whether civilization has risen before, we must ask, what if it began not on land, but in the sea? Our vision of civilization is shaped by our own path. Cities of stone, towers of metal, roads and machines built on the surface of continents. But intelligence does not demand dry ground. Minds can evolve wherever life thrives. Dolphins, octopuses, whales, all show startling signs of cognition, complex communication, problem-solving, memory, even play. If such intelligence exists today, could it have emerged long ago in forms far stranger than ourselves? The ocean, however, is both generous and merciless. It preserves little. Bones of ancient whales dissolve into silt. Coral reefs rise and fall, leaving only faint limestone traces. Shipwrecks vanish within centuries, consumed by salt and organisms. The seafloor itself is temporary, renewed every 200 million years as tectonic plates shift. Whatever lives and dies in the deep, the Earth's mantle eventually reclaims. If there had once been a marine civilization, one that built, communicated, perhaps even transformed its world, what would we find today? Almost nothing. No ruins, no monuments, no cities buried in sand. At best, we might detect subtle signatures, chemical anomalies in sediments, spikes in carbon or nitrogen, traces of artificial compounds. But even these could be smoothed away by the endless churn of the sea. The thought is haunting. Perhaps intelligence rose not once, but many times. Perhaps the ocean has seen empires we will never know. Creatures who mastered currents, farmed the seafloor, shaped tools of bone and shell, only to vanish without leaving fossils we can recognize. Their memory might be as invisible as the tides, erased not in centuries, but in cycles measured by the breath of the planet. We, standing on the shore, imagine the sea as empty. Yet beneath the waves lie entire worlds, most still unknown to us. Vast trenches, deeper than mountains are tall, remain unexplored. Gigantic creatures drift in darkness, unseen, unrecorded. We know more of the surface of Mars than of our own deep oceans. What secrets, then, still wait in the abyss? Could there be echoes, even faint ones, of a story older than ours? Myths speak often of civilizations swallowed by the sea. Atlantis, lost in a single night. Lemuria, said to sink beneath the waves. These are not records, but they are memories of a kind, reflections of humanity's fear and fascination with water, with the power of the ocean to both give and take life. We invent these stories perhaps because, deep down, we know how easily the sea can erase. If civilizations rose in the oceans, their fate was inevitable. Their ruins would not stand against wind and sand, but against currents and salt. Their history would not crumble, it would dissolve, and in time, even the ground beneath them would be swallowed, melted into the mantle, erased forever. The ocean is Earth's greatest mystery and its greatest veil. If others came before us, perhaps they did not walk the land at all. Perhaps they swam, dreamed, and vanished, their memory scattered into the depths, where silence is eternal. To wonder about civilizations millions of years ago is to stretch the imagination into almost unreachable time. But even within the narrow window of our own species, there are mysteries, shadows of forgotten ages, stones that whisper of worlds older than history. For most of human existence, we lived as wanderers, small bands, hunters, gatherers, moving with the seasons. Civilization, we are told, began only around 10,000 years ago, with farming and villages, writing and monuments. Yet the earth holds traces that suggest our story may not be so simple. High on a hill in southeastern Turkey lies Göbekli Tepe. Buried for millennia, uncovered only in the late 20th century. It is older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge. 12,000 years ago, at the very end of the Ice Age, people here carved vast stone pillars, decorated with animals, arranged in circles. It was not a village. It was not a farm. It was something else. A temple, a gathering place, a symbol of a mind already capable of architecture, engineering, vision. Civilization, it seems, may not have been born from agriculture. Perhaps agriculture was born from civilization. Elsewhere, the enigmas multiply. Massive stone walls in South America, fitted with such precision that no blade can slip between their blocks. Ancient cities submerged off the coasts of India and Japan, their foundations visible beneath the waves. Legends of lost golden ages echo across cultures. Atlantis in Greece, drowned beneath the sea in a single night. Shambhala in Tibet, hidden beyond mountains. Forgotten kingdoms in the deserts of Africa. Most scholars caution restraint. Many of these mysteries can be explained by ingenuity, chance, or exaggeration. Myth, after all, is not history. But myths often contain embers of memory. They preserve not details, but emotions. The awe of something seen, the trauma of something lost. Could some of these legends be distorted recollections of real events? Civilizations erased by floods, earthquakes, or the slow grinding of time? Even the timeline of human history itself is fragile. Our oldest known writing is barely 5,000 years old. Before that, we rely on artifacts, on bones, on guesses. What if entire cultures rose and fell in the 10, 20, even 50,000 years before recorded history began? What if their voices are gone, their monuments buried, their memory lost, save for fragments we misinterpret as myth? We know that humans nearly vanished before. Around 70,000 years ago, a volcanic eruption at Toba in Indonesia may have reduced our species to a few thousand survivors. Imagine if those survivors had not endured. Imagine if humanity had vanished then, leaving behind only scattered tools, faint carvings, half-built monuments. Would a future species, rising 1,000,000 years later, ever know we had been? Or would they dismiss the fragments as curiosities, natural accidents, puzzles without answers? When we look at ancient ruins, we see not just stone. We see mirrors. They reflect back our need to believe in continuity, in permanence, in memory. Yet what they truly tell us is how fragile memory is, how easily history dissolves into legend, and legend into silence. Perhaps we are not the first civilization on Earth. Or perhaps we are, but not the first humans to dream of one. Our ancestors may have built worlds we cannot yet imagine, smaller, briefer, erased by time, leaving only whispers and myth, and the faint echo of awe carved into stone. The lost human ages remind us that even in the short span of our own species, memory is a fragile flame. If we struggle to know our past 10,000 years, how can we ever claim certainty about 10 million or 100? If cities crumble and monuments vanish, if oceans erase and tectonic plates consume, then what remains of civilization at all? Perhaps not stone, not steel, not glass, but something subtler, something written not in ruins, but in chemistry. Every civilization changes its world. It is inescapable. We alter forests into fields, rivers into reservoirs, mountains into quarries. And above all, we alter the air. Our industrial age, brief as it is, has already rewritten the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide levels have risen to heights not seen in millions of years. Methane pulses upward. Nitrogen from fertilizers seeps into rivers, lakes, and oceans. Plastics and microfibers drift in sediments, embedding themselves in layers of mud. Radioactive isotopes from nuclear detonations scatter across the globe, silent markers of our age. These are not monuments of stone. They are fingerprints of industry. They will outlast our cities, our nations, perhaps even our species. A geologist millions of years from now could drill into the rock record and see the moment of our presence, a sharp boundary, a sudden spike, a layer of strangeness unlike any before. This is why many scientists already speak of a new epoch, the Anthropocene, defined not by fossils of our bones, but by the scars of our chemistry. If this is what we leave behind, then could it also be what reveals if someone came before us? When geologists study deep time, they find anomalies. The Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, 55 million years ago, when global temperatures spiked by 5 degrees in a geologic instant. Carbon levels soared, oceans acidified, climates shifted dramatically. Most explanations point to volcanic outbursts or methane released from ocean floors. But some wonder, could such a signal also be consistent with industry? Could it be the shadow of a civilization now erased? There are other moments too. Spikes of carbon, abrupt shifts in oxygen, strange pauses in the usual rhythms of Earth's climate. Natural explanations abound, yet the Silurian Hypothesis lingers in the background asking quietly, what if? What if one of these anomalies is not only geological, but artificial? Even if there was, we might never be able to prove it. The fingerprints of volcanoes and industries can look hauntingly similar when seen through the lens of millions of years. The gases, the carbon, the nitrogen, the planet does not distinguish whether they were released by fire in the crust or fire in machines. The record is blurred, ambiguous, incomplete. And yet, the idea itself is sobering, because it means this. If another civilization once altered the climate, they may have suffered the same consequences we now face. Rising seas, collapsing ecosystems, heat that reshaped the world. Perhaps they did not survive their Anthropocene. Perhaps their ambition consumed them, just as we fear ours may consume us. This possibility turns the question inward. If we are not the first, then we may not be the last. But if others before us altered the climate and vanished, then our future is not guaranteed. The earth does not forgive ambition. It does not preserve arrogance. It remembers only in chemistry and in extinction. The climate fingerprints of our age will endure long after our voices fade. Future beings may never know who we were, what language we spoke, what dreams we dreamed. But they will see the mark we left, a thin, strange line in stone, telling them that once something stirred the planet, burned its fuels, transformed its air, and then was gone. And if they find such a line in their own deep history, what will they think? Will they see it as chance, as nature, as mystery? Or will they too whisper, perhaps we were not the first? The universe does not care for permanence. Above us, drifting silently through the void, are reminders that civilization is fragile not only to the patience of Earth, but to the violence of the cosmos. At any moment, a visitor from the dark can arrive, ending history in a flash of fire. 66 million years ago, such a visitor came. A mountain of stone from the heavens, 6 miles wide, struck what is now the Yucatan Peninsula. In an instant, forests ignited, oceans surged, skies filled with fire. The impact unleashed energy, greater than every nuclear weapon on Earth combined. Within months, sunlight was choked by dust and ash. Temperatures plummeted. Plants withered. The food chain collapsed. The great dinosaurs, who had ruled the planet for over 160 million years, vanished almost overnight. Their bones remained, but their dominion ended. This was not the only strike. Throughout Earth's history, asteroids and comets have left scars. The Sudbury Basin in Canada, the Vredefort Dome in South Africa, the craters hidden beneath oceans and jungles, each one a reminder that our planet is not a fortress, but a target. Now imagine a civilization, human or otherwise, caught in such a storm. Imagine cities, networks, machines, all wiped away in the fury of a single day. Stone would shatter, metal would melt, oceans would boil. Survivors, if any, would live in darkness and famine. Perhaps they would endure for a time. Perhaps they would rebuild, but perhaps not. Perhaps their entire story would end, leaving behind only a layer of iridium-rich dust, the universal fingerprint of cosmic impact. The cosmos has other weapons too. Gamma-ray bursts, titanic explosions from collapsing stars, can bathe entire planets in deadly radiation. Solar flares can scorch atmospheres. Shifts in Earth's orbit can plunge the planet into ice or heat. The universe is vast, but it is not gentle. Civilizations are candles burning in a storm. When we look back into Earth's record, we see extinction events, sudden collapses of life. The Ordovician, the Devonian, the Permian, the Triassic, the Cretaceous. 5 great die-offs, each wiping away the majority of species. The causes vary: impacts, volcanoes, climate shifts, but the effect is the same: near total erasure. If any intelligence lived through these times, it may not have survived. If any civilization thrived, it may have been reduced to fossils, then to dust, then to silence. This is the cruel possibility. Even if civilizations rise again and again across deep time, the universe may erase them with ruthless regularity. The Earth recycles, but the cosmos destroys. And what is left behind is almost indistinguishable from natural catastrophe. A layer of soot, a spike of metals, a gap in the fossil record. For us, this possibility is both terrifying and humbling. We build our technologies, our towers, our networks, but we remain vulnerable to the sky. We scan for asteroids. We measure the stars. We prepare for what little we can. Yet the truth remains: we are not immune. We are as fragile as those who may have come before. If civilizations existed before us, perhaps they too watched the skies. Perhaps they too wondered if they were safe. Perhaps their end came not from arrogance or decay, but from the merciless hand of the universe itself. And if so, then their memory is gone, erased in a single night of fire. What does it mean if we are not the first? If the Earth has hosted other civilizations before ours, their memory long since erased. What truth does that hold for us? The first realization is humility. We think of ourselves as singular, as the pinnacle of Earth's story, but deep time whispers otherwise. The planet is not a stage built for us alone. It is an ancient canvas upon which many stories may have been painted, each one temporary, each one erased by time. If others came before, then our place is not unique, but recurring. We are one chapter among many. The second realization is fragility. We build our monuments in stone, our cities in steel, our networks in invisible signals. Yet if others once did the same and vanished, then permanence is an illusion. Civilization is not eternal. It is a momentary flame, flickering brightly, then gone. The Earth remembers not in architecture, but in chemistry, not in monuments, but in scars. What we think will last forever will not. The third realization is destiny. If civilizations can rise more than once, then perhaps they rise again and again. Life may be more resilient than we imagine. Intelligence may be a pattern, not an accident. A flower that blooms whenever the conditions are right. But if they rise and fall, if none survive, then perhaps there is a lesson written in silence, that civilization carries within it the seeds of its own undoing. And the fourth realization is responsibility. For if we are not the first, and if the others perished, then their story is a warning, a caution written not in words, but in absence. We cannot know their mistakes, but we can feel the weight of their silence. And in that silence is a message. Do not squander what you have. Do not assume eternity. This is why the Silurian Hypothesis matters. Not because it proves others existed, but because it forces us to imagine that they might have. It teaches us that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, and that our survival depends on more than power, more than ambition. It depends on humility, restraint, wisdom. If we are the only civilization Earth has ever known, then we are rare beyond measure, a miracle in the void. If we are not the only one, then we are part of a cycle, and our fate may be bound to theirs. In either case, the conclusion is the same. Our time is precious, and our choices matter. We are fragile, We are temporary, but we are also here now, alive in this brief moment when the flame of civilization burns. What we do with it, whether we let it fade or carry it forward into the stars, will decide if our story ends as theirs did, or if it continues into something greater. The Earth is ancient beyond our imagination. 4.5 billion years of oceans rising and falling, of continents drifting, of mountains growing and crumbling to dust. Against that immensity, our entire story, from the first fire struck in the dark to the glowing cities of today, is no more than a moment. If others came before us, they too are gone. Their voices silent, their monuments erased, their memories scattered into chemistry and stone. We cannot know their names. We cannot know their dreams. We can only feel their absence, like a faint echo in the silence of deep time. And if there were none before us, if we are truly the first, then our responsibility is even greater. For then, we are the opening note of a song that may yet stretch into eternity, or end too soon, lost before it ever leaves Earth. Either way, the lesson is the same. Civilization is fragile, is a flame lit in the darkness, flickering against the winds of time. We imagine permanence, but the universe knows only change. The Earth forgets. The cosmos erases. All that endures is the pattern of rise and fall, written across aeons like waves on the shore. What then should we do with our moment? We can build as if eternity is ours, or we can live with the humility of knowing it is not. We can exhaust our world, or we can cherish it. We can see ourselves as the end of history, or as its beginning. The Silurian Hypothesis reminds us that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. We may not know if others came before, but we know this: we are here now, alive in this fleeting instant, and that is miracle enough. Perhaps one day, millions of years from now, someone else will ask the same question of us. They will find a thin line in stone, a scar of chemistry, a subtle fingerprint in the Earth's memory. They may wonder who we were, what lives we lived, what dreams we dreamed. They may never know our stories, but they will know we were here. And maybe that is all civilization ever leaves behind. Not monuments, not words, but the simple truth of existence. That once, in the deep silence of time, there were beings who loved, who built, who reached for the stars. If we are not the first, then we are not alone in that silence. If we are, then the story of civilization begins with us. In either case, the choice is ours. Will we let the flame fade, another forgotten chapter erased by stone and sea? Or will we carry it forward, beyond Earth, beyond the reach of extinction, into the endless night of the cosmos? The universe is vast, the Earth is old, but in this moment, we are here, and that is enough to make our story worth telling.